Hello there, and welcome to Epic Conversations. I am your host, Rohan Ricky, and today we're sitting down with Reverend Adrian Sunarine. He's a minister in the Presbyterian Church and a friend of mine. How are you today, Rev?
Very well, thank you,
Thank
Rohan.
you
It's
so
great to be
much.
here.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
We are honored to have you here, and Rev insisted that he sit 3 feet away from me. I think we're at 4 feet, and he's been insisting on that before any virus came out. So, Rev, just for those people who do not know you, could you just give them a little background into why you ended up becoming a reverend in the Presbyterian Church?
Why I ended up becoming a reverend? Well, even for those who do know me, they may not know the answer to that. And let me think. Well, when I think about why I became a minister of Word and Sacrament in the Presbyterian Church in Trinidad and Tobago, I think I had three different sources of inspiration that all converge to make my decision clear. And the first source of inspiration was my father, my dad. He was a minister in the Presbyterian Church for many years, and as I grew up, as a child and growing up, listening to him and experiencing his ministry, I felt excited, I felt thrilled, I felt always privileged to be with him, and I really enjoyed what he did, and I felt a sense of fulfillment whenever I was with him at ministry events and seeing him and listening to him and experiencing that fullness of love and light that he brought to ministry. The second source of my inspiration, I believe, were the people in the church. The people in the church, as I became involved in the youth group, as I sang in the choir, and as I became involved in church events, people who prayerfully and carefully discerned that God was calling me to ministry, even before I figured it out, Rohan. People often told me, God is calling you to ministry, when I didn't believe it or I couldn't see that happening yet. And the third source of my inspiration was that careful, intense introspection on my own life as I thought about what I was doing and where God was calling me. Because as I thought about my own life, I was encouraged to ensure that God was calling me to ministry. Notably, when I went to my dad to tell him, I feel God is calling me to ministry, he tried his best to figure out if I was just saying that because I couldn't think of anything else I wanted to do in life, or if I was really certain that this was where God was calling me. So he encouraged me to explore options broadly, to learn a lot about life and the world, because even if I felt that that wasn't where I was called to be, at least it would strengthen my breadth of experience and focus me on ministry. And that's what I did. And in my life, Rohan, I've been privileged to have been part of and involved with many great professions and many great vocations. So, in addition to ministry, I became and I still am an attorney of Trinidad and Tobago and a barrister of England and Wales. And I was a teacher, and I also worked with various businesses and governments in trying to make the world a better place. But in doing different things, I realized that, for example, when I was practicing law, for me, being a lawyer was kind of like doing ironing. I could do it, but I didn't love it. So here I am in ministry after careful reflection as to where God is calling me in life.
Rev, that's so coincidental because I'm an attorney at law myself,
Okay.
and exactly what you're describing is how I felt. I didn't feel called to be a lawyer, and I didn't feel like it was right for me. And I myself have switched careers recently, so that's really interesting, and it's so nice to hear that someone feels that strongly about a calling, and it's nice to know. I mean, I learned a little bit more about you yourself, after knowing you for quite a while now. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
And what I really want to ask you is that right now we're living in such a unique period of time, especially to be a spiritual leader, because I believe, just like the doctors of the world right now, you and people who are reverends around the world and spiritual leaders are so important because we are living through a time in human history that is unprecedented. And it's of course, we know we're talking about the coronavirus.
Yes.
And the coronavirus is actually separating us. We aren't able to congregate in church. We aren't able to be with our family and friends. You know, there's so much fear and we can't support each other, be there physically. So, as a reverend, how does it feel to be in this time where you cannot even look back at past reverends and pluck knowledge from them because you have to really look to your source, to God, for your answers?
As you said, Rohan, these are unprecedented times. That is so true. These are also unpredictable times because we don't know what's happening moment by moment, day by day. And in our nation, as the reports of cases continue to grow, panic and fear spreads. And there, I think, is the first challenge and calling of the church to address that panic and fear, to call people to faith and not fear, to remind people that even though these are unprecedented and unpredictable times, every time is unprecedented and unpredictable. I remember, and here's a quote not from the Bible but from Lord of the Rings, where in Lord of the Rings one of the characters said, "I wish we didn't live in these times." And Gandalf, the wizard, says, "That's what everybody who lives in difficult times says, but these are the times you're called to live in." And although we haven't lived through times like this before, we can learn lessons from times in the past. So we learn lessons from the beginning of history, the foundations of the heavens and the earth, the times of the prophets, the times of the early church, as we think of them facing persecution, as we think of them being challenged when they had to meet in secret. Now we are in a very different time where we are called by the authorities in health and government for the love of people and the safety of our communities not to meet in person. Through the marvels of modern technology, we can connect spiritually without meeting physically. So we can meet online, we can meet virtually, we can be blessed that way, and we are grateful for that. Because of that, we're in a better position and in a more advanced stage of technology to meet with people and connect them and to uplift them than people were in the days of the First World War or the epidemic of 1918, which is sometimes called the epidemic of the Spanish flu. And it's important for us to realize that it was called that because Spain did the first widespread testing, not because it originated there. And we're more advanced and able to connect to people better than in the days of the Second World War. So today, our church has unprecedented challenges, yes, but we also have unprecedented opportunities. And because of that, we have greater responsibilities to reach out, to meet people, not physically, but still personally, online, through the phone, through a WhatsApp message, or through other marvels of modern technology that I don't understand yet, like Instagram and all those others. But we can still connect to people, we can still call them to God, we can still pray with them, we can still be with them. Almost every day, I've been getting phone calls from people in different kinds of challenging circumstances now. Whether they're worried about their business, whether they're worried about their health, or whether a particular situation is presenting them with some new kind of horizon of fear or faith or opportunity or stress. So new occasions teach new duties.
True. And you know, it's so interesting that you said we're living in a time with unprecedented opportunities. I'm a lay preacher myself, and I did a sermon the other day, speaking about how social media and technology could separate us, meaning that we've lost that personal touch when we're physically together. If I'm sitting with you having a conversation, I'm on my phone, WhatsApping people. And it's so interesting how, with a perspective shift and how the world is now, that social media and videos and messages is the best way to communicate, and we could actually communicate with each other spiritual messages. And now that this virus has separated us physically, this has become actually a really important medium to use in the world. And what we thought before was actually separating us and disconnecting us from each other is actually what is connecting us now.
That's a very good point, Rohan. And you've also mentioned that social media can divide us as well as separate us. Now more than ever, we have to have wisdom and grace and compassion when using social media. People will post things that make us angry or upset. People will post things that will make us want to unfriend them and block them. And we are challenged to be careful about what we post, how we respond to people, how we acknowledge people's anger while at the same time not letting it fuel the anger of others. And here we can recognize that in the life and ministry of Jesus, we think, for example, of Jesus encountering the Samaritan woman. In the Gospel of John, Jesus encounters the Samaritan woman. That surprises and shocks the disciples of Jesus because he's talking to a woman who is a foreigner, and that wasn't allowed. But the life of that Samaritan woman was changed forever. She now had a new focus to her life. She became not an outcast but an evangelist. She was a missionary of Jesus now. In the same way, we can think about how we have used social media. Probably we've posted things that may have been things that were not advancing the gospel of Christ. Things that didn't bless and benefit the lives of people around us. Now we are challenged to be, more than ever, the ambassadors of God on earth. So we're challenged to recognize Jesus comes to give us life, and life in all its abundance. What does this mean for you as you have every conversation? Because now many of our conversations will be on WhatsApp. They'll be on Verify God. Do your messages and your posts bless and benefit the people of God, the community of God? Do you reach out to the world, not with the words that come from the world, but with the wisdom of God? I think that's a new challenge for us and a new calling, so that we break down barriers, we heal divisions, we assuage and alleviate anger, and we call people to recognize there's a new and blessed community that God can create now, and it starts with you.
That's so true. And how you speak of the anger that people are feeling. Now in the world, people are angry because they don't understand. You know, there are certain people, their family members are getting sick, their elderly are passing away, and obviously you would like to believe that God, like some people may say that God is punishing the evil, but obviously this is not only happening to bad people. This is happening to good people also, and that's maybe where the anger is manifesting from true people, where they are thinking that, why is this happening, and where is God in this chaos? Is there any advice that you could give these people to enlighten them to what God's plan may be, or where they could look to for answers?
Part of our challenge, Rohan, is to admit we don't always have all the answers to everything. And that beginning of humility helps us with our compassion, and it helps us realize that when we look at the life of Jesus, when Jesus was asked questions like this, his response was never to give a sublime theological exposition, but to live with love. Think, for example, in the Gospel of John, where Jesus and his disciples encounter a man who is born blind. And his disciples want to talk theology. They say, who is it who sinned? This man himself or his parents? Because he was born this way. It didn't happen to him later in life. So here's an interesting theological problem, Jesus. And Jesus says, this isn't a theological problem. This is a person. Why was this man born blind? For this day and this moment, so that the glory of God could shine right here, right now, through our actions, through what you can do and say, and through what I can do and say. And then Jesus does something very tactile, almost gross. He spits on the earth and he turns dirt into mud. He pastes that mud onto the man's eyes and tells him to go and wash. Why didn't Jesus just tell him, you're healed? Why didn't Jesus maintain theological and social distance? Why did he have to touch dirt, make it into mud, use his fingers and paste it on that man? I think it's because Jesus shows us we're made from the dust of the earth. We have that elemental togetherness, that we're made from the same stuff. And Jesus can use that same stuff to show us we're in this together. It's not a matter of blame, but of blessing. So it's not a matter of figuring out, well, whose fault is this? But it's a matter of designing a new fellowship that, Lord, those people are suffering. Where is God in the suffering? God is suffering with them. Those people, those doctors and nurses, they're working, laboring with the people whose ailment, whose illness could potentially contaminate them and continue the contagion that could lead to calamity and catastrophe and their own sickness, even death. And that kind of sacrifice, God is there. God is there in that sacrifice. God is there in that willingness to help others. And those of us who are called to fight the battle by staying home, and if nothing happens, we've won the battle. God is with us, telling us to curb our tendencies to want to go and fed, to curb our tendencies to want to worship with hundreds of people who are there in person, and we want to hug everybody and kiss everybody. By restraining ourselves and constraining what we want to do, God is blessing us and God is there. And God is challenging us. Be a blessing, don't look for blame.
That's so true. And it's so funny how so many times in life we look for distractions when we're going through a hard time. And now the entire world is experiencing this, and we cannot distract ourselves. We are forced to withdraw within and to take ourselves from all the idols that we may have worshipped, maybe hanging out, liming, is it drinking, the things that will distract us, even going to the movies. Maybe if you're going through a hard time, you go and you distract yourself with a movie. And it's so interesting that you're saying that, because now we have to look within and look for the strength that God can provide us.
That's so true, Rohan. We are always interested in the latest, greatest distraction. I saw a comic strip recently, a comic in one of the British newspapers. They showed a family, socially distant, seated far away from each other. They're looking at the television, and the television has coronavirus latest. And one member of the family is saying to the other, "Oh, I miss Brexit." But it's meant to show distractions come and go, news come and go. However, this situation, this coronavirus, this COVID-19, will this be another distraction, or will it lead to behavioral changes that will endure? And if so, what will those behavioral changes be, and how will they impact on our behavior? And how will our beliefs change our behavior? Will we recognize church really isn't a building? Will we realize physically meeting people and arguing about whatever we argue about, things like allocation and things like position and power and prestige and whatever we argue about, boards, committees, rights, things like that, do they really matter? Will we discover that the meetings that have become emails can remain emails? Will we discover that we can get a new set of priorities? I wonder about those things, Rohan, and those are things to prayerfully reflect on and prayerfully lift up to God and prayerfully engage in with each other as we think about new behaviors from this new challenge and as we think about how our beliefs can create new behaviors for a new church that is yet to emerge.
Very true, very true. And I think that the main thing people must have these days is faith.
Yes.
Because there's so many unanswered questions, there's so much uncertainty happening in the world that I think the strongest weapon we have against this right now is faith.
Yes. Our faith is created by the grace of God. We are reminded that our faith is itself a gift. By the grace of God, we have the faith to respond to God, to recognize that there is a God, to realize that God is at work. The grace of God, by which we mean the unmerited free love of God, calls us into partnership rather than into politicking against each other. And it calls us into faith rather than anxiety and fear and panic. And it calls us to a new kind of fellowship and a new kind of vision for who we can be, for who our nation can be and become, and for what our church can be created to be as God's instrument in this world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Ralph. I know that you're very busy and that you have other things to go do and spread your message of peace and positivity throughout the country. So we just want to thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. And we just want to remind everybody to remember to practice social distancing, to remember to wash your hands, don't touch your face. And if you have any questions or things that you'd like us to discuss, please comment below. And remember that if this video in some way inspires you, please share it with someone. And thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.